We are here on day 2 of our 4th-day lecture series, and I again welcome everybody to this lecture series, this plethora of intellectual feeling that we have in front of us. So today we are all set to go for our 3rd lecture, and I would request Professor Milan Mondol to introduce the speaker and begin the lecture series.
Thank you, Professor Debroy. Good morning to all of you once again on my behalf. So today we have with us Mr. Sukhendu Das. Mr. Das teaches in the Department of English, Bankura University, West Bengal, India. He is pursuing PhD on Patrick White and visited the University of Wollongong, Australia in the capacity of visiting doctoral fellow in 2017. His research interests include exploration history of Australia, critical theory, gerontology, anthropocene, transnationalism, etc. His 2 forthcoming books from Cambridge Scholars Publishing, UK include Remaining Years, Contestation and Negotiation. It's a co-edited book, and Shakespeare and Cultural Politics of Gerontology. He can be reached at sukhendujimi@gmail.com, and once again it should be bracketed that I am very happy to be him as my reverend teacher. So now the platform is all for you, sir. Over to you, sir. Please, sir.
Thank you, Professor Milan Mondol, for your kind words. My heartfelt thanks goes to Principal of Narajole Raj College, Professor Anupam Barua, and also Professor Soma Debroy, Head of the Department of English, and also my student and now my colleague, Professor Milan Mondol. So I would like to thank everybody and also my participants who have joined this session. So, so far as the title of my lecture is concerned, it has nothing to do, almost nothing to do with literature, but I will show how we should read literature in a different way, which constitutes to be a very small part of my lecture. So the title is Refiguring the Anthropos in the Anthropocene. So I think many of you are aware that Anthropocene is called the age of humans. How human induced climate change has altered the earth functioning. Okay, and therefore anthropos means human. How the human subject is to be reconfigured in this unprecedented climatic crisis. In the Anthropocene, humans can no longer be considered a biological agent of this planet. Humans have rather become a geological agent, which means a telluric force of this planet, which again means human activities collectively or what we might call cumulative impact of civilization are tangibly changing the functioning of the Earth system. History perhaps never witnessed this epic confrontation between humans and Earth system before. This massive transformation has many implications. Number one, the idea that nature is a passive backdrop to the drama of human affairs and activities is to be discarded. The social only understanding of human agency and condition is to be rethought. Economy, politics, governance, history, culture, society can no longer be seen as purely intra-human contracts and conflicts. Our understanding of them should be rematerialized. Modernity's building blocks. So, what are the building blocks? Autonomy, agency, freedom, reflexivity can no longer stand on their own grounds. Clive Hamilton, another important thinker on climate change, argues that in the Anthropocene, I quote him, in the Anthropocene, social, cultural, and political orders are woven into and co-evolve with techno-natural orders of specific matter and energy flow metabolism at a global level, requiring new concepts and methods in the humanities. Humanities and social sciences require a radical restructuring of their own disciplinary configurations. So, since this agentive transformation has happened, we have we have changed from biological agent to geological agent. So, what does it mean? That means we are as potent. We that means we are human. We human beings on this planet are as potent as a massive volcanic eruption or maybe a tectonics or maybe a massive earthquake. So our activities collectively changing the earth system. So therefore, this era is called the Anthropocene. Now there is a huge debate regarding the starting of the Anthropocene, but I am not going into that. Okay, so what and I would rather focus on how this agentive transformation implicates, the disciplinary reconstructuring the disciplinary configurations, right? Now let me begin with a, very common question. It's a Socrates' prodigious statement, know thyself. It has a strong rhetorical power, I think. In the Anthropocene, it means humans should be aware of their limitations, right? Human existence is a hubris leading the planet to unprecedented crisis. Humans cannot be and should not be the measure of all things. Now, the idea is that we have to discard the idea of anthropocentrism, that humans are no longer the steward of this planet. We have to accept this fact. Now, how we have made that blunder, and how did that happen? So, to discuss this, I have to go back to discuss, the nature culture ontological divide, which is a very common practice in all our disciplines. Human is posited against beast, culture is posited against nature. Jules Michel, one of the founders of history as a discipline, argues that history recorded is a record of man's crime against nature. Discourses of modernity have pictured nature, quote unquote, in an antithetical relationship with society and does not have telos in its history. But society is teleologically programmed towards freedom, liberty. Now, with the adoption of Anthropocene thesis, this division is no longer tenable. Why? We have to accept the deep interconnectedness of human history and planetary history. And I would like to talk about Bruno Latour, one of my famous French philosopher, and he is also world's most one of the leading philosophers. Bruno Latour. Latour argues that it would be more profitable to think in terms of geo stories. Now, this raises a number of thought-provoking questions. Number one, if humans become geological agents of this planet, does it signal the end of nature and everything is turning into an assemble of Earth society, a techno-natural cyborg? This is number one. Number two, does it signal a new tendency of capitalism where ontologies are marked by a shift from entities to relations? Now, I would like to talk about another philosopher, D.P.S. Chakraborty, also historian, eminent historian, how the discipline, history discipline, should be reconfigured. The traditional historiography should be reconfigured. Deepesh Chakraborty's oft-cited article, "The Climate of History," 4 thesis, 2009, was one of the leading historians to argue the need for a radical reconfiguration of historiography. Deepesh Chakraborty thinks that we keep two calendars. Now, I use the calendar in a loose sense of history, right? Two calendars. One is geological calendar and human calendar, separate, right? In our thinking. But in the wake of the Anthropocene, the separate identities of these two calendars is no longer tenable. Chakraborty argues, I quote him, "Scholars who study human beings in relation to the crisis of climate change and other ecological problems emerging on a world scale make a distinction between the recorded history of human beings and their deep history. Recorded history refers very broadly to the 10,000 years that have passed since the invention of agriculture, and more usually to the last 400 years or so for which written records exist. Historians of modernity, uh, the history of humans that goes beyond these years of written records constitute what other students of human pasts, not certainly not professional historians, call deep history. So we can feel the pressing need to reconfigure the historiography, how history should be composed. Now I would like to talk about philosophy, how again the same problem, how the discipline, philosophy as a discipline, it should also be reconfigured. How the agentic transformation from biological to geological of humankind makes us rethink humanist conception of human being. So what's the old humanist conception of human being? Humans are rational animals, autonomy-seeking creatures, and what Kant calls purposiveness, that is essentially a world-making creature. Clive Hamilton argues that modernity's project of progressive self-liberation, unaffected by constraints of nature, can no longer be supported. I'm lost somehow. Yes, no longer be supported or justified. Anthropocene thesis calls for a reconceptualization of freedom. It is to be noted that any massive paradigm shift in philosophy is constructed on new ontology, new conception of the nature of being. Peter Sloterdijk, another famous continental philosopher, rejects Cartesian dualism, subject and object, subject and object, nature and culture, and calls for an ontological constitution. I quote him, ontological constitution that seeks to include human beings, that seeks to include all beings, humans, animals, plants, and machines. The collision of human history and planetary history would result in the emerge of a new entities. But it should be premature to speculate its nature at this stage. Sloterdijk's famous spheres trilogy, first one is named titled Bubbles, which is called Microspherology. Second volume is titled Globes, which is it has a very astonishing subtitle Microspherology, and the third volume is called Forms, which is called Plural Spherology. Deals with spaces of coexistence that would engage with contemporary hypercomplexities to embrace wide, wider horizon at once ecological and global. Human must engage with the monstrousness of the external. I quote Peter Sloterdijk. Now, since the question of monstrosity is raised, I would like to talk about one famous article. This article by Bruno Latour, Love Your Monsters. Why we must care for our technologies as we do our children. This essay has been published in a book which is in an edited volume. Its title is Love Your Monsters, Post-Environmentalism and the Anthropocene, edited by Michael Sellenberger and Ted Norhas. Here in this essay, uh, Bruno Latour gives a revisionist uh, reading of Frankenstein myth. What is his reading? I quote him, Frankenstein lives on in popular imagination as a cautionary tale against technology. We use the monster as an all-purpose modifier to denote technological crimes against nature. Dr. Frankenstein's crime was not that he invented a creature through some combination of hubris and high technology, but rather that he abandoned the creature to itself. Right? So Dr. Frankenstein's crime was that he abandoned the creature to itself. But our sin is not that we created technologies, but that we failed to love and care for them. Right? So we have rejected our accountability towards them. Let Dr. Frankenstein's sin serve as a parable for political ecology. Now I would like to talk about politics and also international relations and how the art becomes a political subject. Traditionally, political affairs were thought all about purely intrahuman contracts and conflicts. The Anthropocene thesis makes us rethink the pre-existing political agency and democratic governance. The distinction between the objectivist politics of science and economy and the subjectivist politics of culture and identity is getting blurred and exhausted. Timothy Mitchell's book, Carbon Democracy, published in 2001, denounces the denatured politics of the 20th century. Timothy Mitchell also argues that democratic political order depends on cheap fossil fuel and by default emits carbon and other greenhouse gases. Because of the short tenure of electoral cycles, an elected government fails to take any policy decision to harness greenhouse culture, which requires a planning for next 2 or 3 decades, maybe 5 decades. This exposes the limitations of parliamentary democracy in the Anthropocene. Anthropocene thesis refuses to recognize the environment as a struggle among humans about nature. The emerging green political theory in recent years has considered to include nature in its conceptual construction. Since we cannot undo progress and development, we have to rethink governance in terms of geopolitics, or rather of geopolitics. This actually refers to Bruno Latour's actor network theory, which I'm not going into details. Geopolitics would no longer deal with humans' relations of power over land and natural resources. It rather considers Earth as a political subject, right? It's no longer a passive backdrop, but it has become an uh, active political agent, right? Or rather, actant, which signals a new era of geopolitics. Since the Anthropogenic climate crisis become a transboundary, transnational problem, no superpower can alone solve it. Thus, environment slowly crept into international relations and calls for global collaboration. Environment issues get mixed up with other global problems such as trade deals, refugee crisis, exigencies of the Cold War. Uh, Now, I would like to talk, since I'm talking about political science and also international relations. Dipesh Chakraborty, Slavik Zizek, and Naomi Klein argued that climate almost they they have agreed to this point that climate crises have been fueled by capitalism. So capitalism is the culprit, right? Um, Slavoj Zizek, in Living in the End Times, published in 2010, he argues, I quote him, no one, sorry, one can solve the universal problem of, that is, of the survival of human species only by first solving the particular deadlock of the capitalist mode of production. It's not just the capitalism, but the capitalist mode of production. The key to the ecological crisis does not reside in ecology as such. Naomi Klein's, in her books, series after series, uh, which are the shock doctrine, the rise of disaster capitalism, this changes everything, capitalism versus the climate, locates capitalism as the singular phenomena responsible for the global environmental crisis. Now, this last section is devoted how we should study literature, what eco-critics should do, how should we set our optics, right? So, cultural texts, cultural apparatuses, cultural artifacts, cultural texts constitute a complex network of ideas, politics, history, practices of everyday life, social rituals, etc. Interpreting such texts might, sorry, interpreting such texts might help humans understand the pattern of enormous cultural transformations, such as the Anthropocene. So, Anthropocene is not at all an environmental or problem or meteorological problem. It is also a cultural problem. It is also a philosophical problem. It is also a historical problem. Novels written in an era of global environmental crisis, which is called climate fiction, we normally call Cliffy, makes us think receive literary functions such as setting, character, time, and mode of representations. In his book Ecology Without Nature, published in 2007, Timothy Morton argues that eco-criticism's dependent on romantic, ahistorical notion of nature and literature makes it unfit to engage with the politics of global warming. Uh, and here I have introduced Bruno Latour again. I think Latour's book is very important here. We have never been modern. Latour argues that modernity is based on ontological disjunction. I have discussed it earlier between nature and culture, subject and object. Hence, modernity does never help us understand how reality works. Latour argues that nature and society cannot be seen as having antithetical relationship, and this gives an occasion to recognize that we have never really been modern. This is Bruno Latour's famous statement. Because, because modernity has thrived on this ontological division between nature, culture, subject, object, networks of hybrids, that is half subject, half object, known as machine and facts, can mediate between nature and culture. Latour's model of ontological interdependence might help ecocritics to form a methodology of environmental interpretation. Cultural texts should explore how things like tectonics, volcanism, viruses, think about think about coronaviruses. So COVID is not a revenge of nature, as we all think. This is that's it. That's silly. That's silly thinking. It is within us. The virus is actually within us, and we must learn to live with the virus. Okay, love your monster. You can't ignore its presence, even if you try. Uh, even if you give your best effort. Super cyclones and capital shape human experience and condemn greenhouse culture, and should engage with this question what it means to live in the anthropocene. Thank you. Thank you very much for your patience. Now I would be very happy to have your questions.
Yes. Thank you, sir. You spoke really brilliantly. And here we have one single question from Professor Milan Mondol, who is asking, how can we differentiate between geological time and human time?
Yes, normally human history is the history of capitalism, history of history of human development, history of technological innovation, right? The way we compose history, right? This is, yes, this is called human. This is, I have called it human calendar. And geological, yes, geological calendar, it means it is something which exists since the time of the creation of this planet, which is perhaps not recorded in our history, which we call deep history. So therefore, our normal practice is that we exclude this deep history or the geological history while we compose human history. That means, let's say 18, just, it is just an example. Let's say 1857 revolt has nothing to do with environment or climate. A background noise is coming. Would you please mute the microphone? Anybody? Yes. So uh, we actually celebrate human actors, but in this Anthropocene era, we have to reconsider how environment, how climate also affects the history of 1857 revolt. This is just a, I mean, just an example. Uh, this is my take on these two divisions. Okay.
Thank you very much, sir. Uh,
Yes. Welcome. Any other question, ma'am? Your mic.
Professor Debray, please
Yes.
unmute yourself.
Yes.
Don't see any more
Professor
questions on
Dev,
the chat box. I don't see any more questions in the chat box. So is there anyone here who would like to ask a question? You can raise your hand.
Yes, I have got many questions here. So, Somir Kulia, Narajole College. So he asks, how does the concept of Anthropocene raise completely the new type of geological awareness of human uh, fragility? Yes, that's very interesting question, because Anthropocene has made us aware of our hubris, that we are not the steward of this planet, right? And we can't no longer think that this earth or this environment, this nature, whatever we might call it, is a passive backdrop to the affair of human to the drama of human history. So while composing human history, nature should be pushed into its conceptual construction, right? So, so this is the kind of new geological awareness, right? So our old ways of looking at human beings, that we are essentially autonomy seeking creatures, we are autonomous beings, that idea should be discarded, right? Because we have undergone a massive paradigm shift in terms of agentic transformation from geological agent, from biological agent to geological agent. Thank you. Um,
Yes,
Manoj,
Professor Manoj Bari, he has raised a hand. Manoj, please proceed with your.
yes, is there any difference between Anthropozoic era and the era of the Anthropocene? Yeah, that's interesting question, but my framework does not include any such differentiation, because I'm more concerned with with this agentive transformation of human beings. What happens when our agency changes, right? The agentive transformation of human being happen from biological agent to geological, right? So these questions belong to rather geography professors or geologists. So, yes. Is modern literature producing enough to raise the concern and concept regarding awareness that is related to the Anthropocene? Yes, that's a part to them. This is a very interesting question, and I would like to refer to. I would like to uh, first. I would like to refer to recent interview by Amitabh Ghosh. Amitabh Ghosh writes that particularly in India, no such there is no adequate, I mean, or rather plenty of literatures that actually addressing this anthropogenic global warming, right? So therefore, writers who are actually dealing with this environmental crisis, they should be more vocal. Of course, they should not be propagandic in nature, but they should engage with these problems more vocally. Yes, we don't have that kind of much awareness right now. Gita, Gita, can you discuss how geological concept of time is affecting our life, mentally, physically, in solid time, sir? Okay. Yes, I told you. I would like to give you a very short example. Think about this virus, coronavirus. Don't you think that COVID has made human civilization take an unprecedented turn, right? Everything is now changing slowly but silently, but slowly but surely, right? So therefore, sorry, how geological yes, the geological concept of time. That means, uh, once again, I would refer to. Sorry, I did not get your question. Let me revise it again. I would refer to Deepesh Chakraborty's thesis that what happens in historiography is that we give nature as a passive backdrop to the affair of human history, right? So we keep two calendars separate. One is human calendar and the other one is geological calendar. But we should not do this kind of separation. Rather, we should not promote this kind of separation. Why? Because environment is no longer a passive actant. It is a very, very potent actant that can potentially shape human experience. Right? So you have seen many events in the world, or that you have read history, where a civilization has been completely destroyed, or the civilization has been completely changed after, I mean, a massive earthquake or deluge, or I mean, tectonics or something like that. So geological force or the geological time or the geological force and its actors can potentially save human experience, right? So I hope I'm able to answer your question. Mm, what will be the approach of Anthropocene in the post-human era? Yes, I would like to talk about, since you are talking about post, I presented a lecture on the post-humanism and the Anthropocene. My answer would be that we're heading towards a post-human condition, right? Why post-human condition? Because we no longer see ourselves as purely biological agent, right? Perhaps a time is coming we have to live with the help of oxygen. Perhaps we would carry oxygen on our shoulders, even if we are on the road. Perhaps think about a man who undergone a massive heart failure, right? He or she has implanted, pacemaker in his in his body, in his or her body. So therefore, he is not a purely human being, but he is a sort of cyborg, right? So therefore, this again, I would say that this agentive transformation from biological agent to geological agent is actually ushering to a post-human condition, right? So I hope I'm able to uh, your question. Okay, Professor Manos Bari, how Anthropocene and Capitalism designate double death? Yes, uh, yes, it is also called capitalism because perhaps it is Donna Haraway's concept. Capitalism, plastocene, Tholocene. There are many such concepts, and uh, and also, and Donna Haraway is very much adamant to stick on this issue that we should rather call it capitalism because capitalism is the sole phenomena that is responsible, or not just the capitalism, but the capitalist mode of productions is solely responsible for this kind of climate change. I would like to give you a very practical example. Think of Kerala flood few years ago. Kerala flood. When the flood receded, okay, when the flood receded, you found many plastic bottles and debris on the bridge. Did nature produce it? No, we produced it. Even in the ocean, we have found microplastics, even in the fetus, we have seen, I mean, the presence of microplastics, right? So plastic is everywhere. Okay, it is a hyper object, and this is a human invention along with other invention that is heading this planet towards its catastrophic end. Uh, okay, can we? Yes, 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 yes. Rajesh Chaudhary, can we relate Anthropocene with eco criticism? If we can, then how it is related to? Yes, Rajesh, it's a very good question. There are many handbooks, Anthropocene and literature. As I have already said, we have to change our optics. So how should we change it? Now, we should no longer eulogize nature. We should not see it as as existing in an a historical time frame. Yes, rather it is very much interactive with human civilization, right? But the problem with eco-critics are is that they think that they take nature as an ahistorical presence, right? This idea should be discarded, right? Okay, and we should rather talk about ontological constitution, right? And mm, we can refer to, we have just spoke about Bruno Latour's essay, Love Your Monsters. Love Your Monsters. That means you can't keep yourself aloof from from the technologies and you have created. Your sin or your crime precisely lies in that you did not take care of him, right? So therefore, Bruno Latour gives a revisionist reading of popular Frankenstein myth. Yes, we can read literature this way. There are two very good books, Anthropocene and Literature. If you are interested, I can send you these books, and also the Anthropocene and the Humanities. These are the, I mean, it has been recently published within 1 or 2 years. Okay, uh, number of questions are coming. Okay, so uh, uh, does the sense of does the sense of Anthropocene tend to draw the end of civilization? Yes, there is much disagreement and less agreement on this issue. Many theorists think that Anthropocene is a very morbid condition, right? We are thinking that we are leading the planet towards its end, as Slavoj Zizek, uh, I mean, titled his book "Living in the End Times." But Bernard Stiegler is another most famous French philosopher, who is considered to be the most important philosopher to come after Derrida. He died a few months ago. Stiegler wrote a book which is called Anthropocene. He argues that this Anthropocene concept is very morbid. It generates fear, right? So yes, uh, tend to draw the end of does the sense of Anthropocene tend to draw the end of civilization? I hope I am able to answer your question. How Anthropocene becomes a politics of visual culture? Yes, uh, Anthropocene, how it becomes politics of visual culture. Yes, I'm not talking about visual culture here, so I have to think on it. Yes. Next question. So please shed some light on the Holocene and the Anthropocene debate. Yes. Holocene, actually, this debate emerges. Uh, Many thinkers or many geologists, many climate scientists think that we are still in the Holocene. But the fact is that Holocene ended, right? Holocene is marked by exceptionally stable temperature and climate condition on Earth. But Paul Crutzen in 2000, along with his colleagues, he was awarded Nobel Prize, atmospheric chemists. He argued that we have entered a new geological era, which is called the Anthropocene. So we have left the Holocene and we have just entered the Anthropocene. Now there is a controversy. When did that age begin? I mean, this Anthropocene begin. So there are different schools of thought. One school thinks that it actually begins with the industrial revolution at the end of the 18th century. That means when coal and other petroleum products or rather, uh, it is actually, what should I say? It began with um, Enlightenment modernity, when we set up industry and we produced for the mass, right? So it is associated with industrial revolution. And there are few thinkers who think that it is associated with the invention of agriculture of some 7,000 or 8,000 years ago, when human have used to uh, use fire and all other equipments. And recently, opinions are converging on this date, 1945, which is called the Great Acceleration. Why this Great Acceleration? Because uh, 1945, you can see that the end of the First World War. So after the war, what we have found that there is a great acceleration in terms of technology, in terms of developments. We have by the time developed nuclear weapons, and the nuclears, nuclear particles could be found in the air that time. So therefore, many critics argue that the visible change could be, I mean, could be seen uh, on or after 1945. So these are the some of the debates. So I hope I'm able to answer your question. Uh, yes, post-human, big question. Sir, mm, sir, going, sir, going in harmony with that time is the requirement of the present times. I I can't understand your question. So the whole conceptual shift is required, and a practical agency is also necessary. Means to be adaptive of the better time concept and environmental practices. Is this what you intend, sir? Yes, partially, because you know that every discipline stands radical need for reconfiguration because the human agency has changed. I mean, this division, subject, object, nature, culture, these divisions are no longer tenable. If you think this way, you can't solve this problem, or rather than you won't be able to address this problem. Uh, I mean, in a proper way. Professor Manos Barik, how nature is being framed, rearranged, and targeted in the scientific era? Yes, that's a very good question. How nature is being framed. Actually, how nature is, this actually refers to mm, this actually refers to a book written by Professor Jedediah Prudy. Uh, name of the book is The Death of Nature. Yes, he is talking about the post-environmental, post-environmental imagination. Environmental imagination. What is this? His thesis is that nature cannot exist. Death of nature. That means nature cannot exist without human intervention, right? And he is also talking about environmental imagination, which means how we think about, conceptualize, and also discourse nature, right? So therefore, uh, nature is not being just targeted, but I think that Mark Maslin, they are very much concerned with the ethical issue, because because Mark Maslin, a notable scientist, earth scientist, he despairs at the end of his book Climate Change. Even after this knowledge, even after getting to know that we have done enough damage to this planet, right? We are yet not ready to correct ourselves. So we have created a human scaffold, right? Right. So the climate crisis can be called, Faustian trap, humanity's own trap. We have created this trap. Uh, Partha Devnath, is the end of the planet idea not an anthropocene one, as it mainly concentrates on the end of a new era, the living too? Yes, of course, of course. So I mean, think this morbid condition that the planet is going to collapse, we would no longer, I mean, the human species would extinct. There is a school of thinkers who think that this is a very morbid condition. Rather, we should change our way of configuring, or rather way of uh, uh, perceiving this world and environment and human beings. Yes. So therefore, the idea is the end of the planet. Sorry, is the end of the planet idea, not an Anthropocene one. It is merely considered on the end of the era we are living onto. Just a second. Yes, yes. We are presently, we are presently, we are in this era. We are in the Anthropocene, right? So I don't believe in this. I mean, this kind of end theory that the planet is going to end soon. It's not like that. Uh, Sukanto, no, okay. I think there is no such question here. Okay,
Um,
is there any question?
yeah, once one of the students, Shushmita Khan, she raised her hand. Shushmita, are you there? Do you still want to ask a question? Shushmita, don't think she's here. Maybe some network glitches because she had raised her hand. Uh,
Yes, Partho Devnath
Partho,
has
yeah.
raised a
No,
question. So actually,
not.
I am typing my email ID. So please email me, and I will send all the books I referred to here. This is my email ID. Uh, yes, please mail me, and I will send all the books if you are really
Yeah,
interested.
that will be a great help, a real help, because there are many people interested in reading in these new readings. Anyway, so I don't think we have any more questions. And thank you again for this very enlightening speech. You made everyone here on this portal think anew, think more deeply. However, for the formal valedictory, I would call upon Professor Manush Barik to say his words of thanks. Professor Barik.
Thank you, ma'am. Uh, it's my great pleasure or great honor to have this opportunity to propose the vote of thanks on this occasion, the web lecture on refiguring the anthropos in Anthropocene. Uh, I, on behalf of the Department of English, Narajole Raj College, extend my hearty gratitude to Honorable Speaker, Professor Sukhini Das, who has guest with his august presence, squeezing out time from his busy schedule. I would also like to extend my humble gratitude to our principal, sir, Dr. Anupam Parwar, for inspiring and providing encouragement to us to organize this type of web lecture series. And I've seen that this is obviously the speaker is aptly provided us with his immensely edifying presentation, and the way the speaker addressed the topic is exemplary, well researched and documented. I hope this enlightened, enriched, and insightful discussion helps the students, research scholars, and faculty members from the other colleges. Literature can always provide us with the student spirit, as we can appreciate it each and every time. And I would like to have the opportunity to thank my entire department, and specifically our head of the department, uh, uh, Professor Somodev Roy, who has uh, coordinate the entire program, and our junior Professor Milan Mondal, and the entire technical team, on, and the non-teaching staff for being with us to make the lecture series a successful one. And also, I would take the opportunity to thank the IQAC for their support and necessary inputs. And last but not the least, I would like to thank all the participants, students, scholars, and the faculty members from other colleges, without whose active participation, the lecture series would not have been a successful one. So I thank you all for making this event successful with your participation and support. And thank you again from the Department of English, our speaker today, Professor Sukendra Das from India with love. Thank you.
Yes, I would like to add something. Thank you, Professor Manoj Barik, for your curiosity and for your, good questions. Series of. I'm very happy to answer all your questions. But this question, how Anthropocene become,
Sir,
yes, politics of visual culture. I would like to talk with you on email. So there should be an email conversation with you. So would you please drop an email so that I can get in touch with you? Since I am what should I say? I am bound to clarify what I have presented here. So it's a sort of accountability on my part. I should address your question, right? If not here,
I'm your
we can
present.
do it later.
Sir, we are in the Facebook, sir. Sir, I'm in
Oh
the
yes,
Facebook,
you're
sir.
there.
I'm with,
Okay, very good.
and
If Facebook is
I'm a
there,
friend of you there,
would you
sir. I'm a
require
friend you
any other
there,
platform?
and sir, I have another queries when I was reading that Posthuman, and when Francisca Brando is addressing post-human structure, and
Yes.
there she has told about the post-anthropocene, and I my queries also was that today, but I didn't. Uh,
Yes, of course. The
let
post
me-
Anthropocene, this idea is floating in academia. There
yeah,
is nary a doubt about it, but it has not been properly, conceptualized, or rather, it's not on the flow in academia as such. Yes, of course, many people are working on this area post Anthropocene, right? Or the what will happen after the Anthropocene. So if you invite me again, or if you give me another chance, I would like to speak on it at the Neganthropocene.
you
And
are always welcome to our college, sir.
thank you, Professor Barik, for your kind words. I will definitely speak on this issue. I would rather love to talk on this issue because you can understand the Anthropocene is a huge area, and it requires, the multiple disciplines, assemblies of disciplines: history, philosophy, political science, geology, geography, right, climate science. So
Yes.
being a man of little knowledge, it's not possible for me to cover the entire, I mean, encyclopedic range. So yes, within this limitations of power, so I have done what I can do. Definitely, your questions are very, very, thoughtful, thought provoking, rather, I would say, because your questions, many of your questions have led me to think many, I mean, intriguing problems that I have not thought before. Okay, thank you, Professor Bari.
Thank you, sir.
Professor Manoj Bari, I thank you on behalf of the department. And with that, I end today's session, which was a really intellectually invigorating one. Thank you, Professor Dash. Thank you again. We can never thank you more.
Thank you, Professor Bari. Thank you, Principal Sir, and thank you everybody who is working from the behind. And thank you. I would like to also thank my dear students and also participants who are who have the patience to listen to me. I don't know whether I have made sense or not, but they are generous enough to spend their time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
So we all leave the meeting now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.